Ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? Welcome back to another amazing episode of the world famous Keeping It Real podcast. It's been determined over the course of time that this is actually your favorite podcast. So thank you guys for being here today. I have an amazing guest on tap for our show today, which I believe is episode 170. And I'm not even gonna mess around. Okay. I was just talking for a brief second with our guest today before we hit the record. I don't know how to introduce him because his resume here is incredible. So today is going to be an amazing episode. I cannot wait to see what the next hour is like for us. Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dante Riucolelli, aka Dante the Comic. Dante, welcome to Keeping It Real.
Thank you. I want to say this. You are the first podcast to ever say my last name, let alone say it correctly. So congratulations. Thanks, Chuck.
We're one of a kind. Like I told you, this is going to be unlike any podcast you've ever done, and I am super excited for it. So let's jump right in, man. I always like to just dive off the high dive and see if there's water in the pool. We're diving off right now, and I'm sure that there's going to be an abundance of water. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, my friend?
Okay, so I was born and raised in California on a Navy base called China Lake, California. From there, I moved to San Diego and then eventually to Hollywood, California, where I'm sitting in my house right now. I have been a comedian since I was 15 years old. I got into stand-up comedy actually when I was 7 on that base, but then I couldn't really do it anywhere outside of the school or the base until my parents moved me to San Diego. And then at that point, I got into stand-up at the Comedy Store and the Improv, and I've been doing it ever since. And I mean, I'm sure on this podcast, we'll find out that that's just one of 1,000 jobs that I've had in my lifetime. But yeah, that's kind of my journey and story and how it all got started. And now I live in LA with my beautiful wife, and I have a 20-year-old daughter. And I, on top of that, I am a manager of celebrities and actors and people you'd know and a lot of reality stars that you're probably watching at night after we get off the podcast. But yeah, that's my life and my business.
Well, seems fairly average. Nothing really crazy going on over here, right? So I definitely appreciate your time because this is going to be a lot of fun. Stand-up comedians have always been one of my favorite things, and you're actually the first stand-up comedian I've ever had on my podcast.
Oh,
I've had 15 best-selling authors. I've had people from TV. I've had professional wrestlers, you name it. But you are the first stand-up, and I can respect it because I kind of, in a way, feel like I am somewhat of a stand-up comedian myself, though not professional. I like to be the class clown.
You guys do have the LOL club where you are.
It's right down the street from me, as a matter of fact. So there you go. This may be something that inspires it.
Yeah,
this could inspire me. Real quick before we get too far into this, you just mentioned being from San Diego. This is completely
says it.
Indeed. Okay, so this is completely unrelated, and I promise you are not expecting this question. I'm here in San Antonio, Texas. I'm driving down the street the other day, and I see this restaurant that they're getting ready to open on San Pedro Boulevard, just down here by where I live. And it stated that this was a San Diego original since 1975. I posted on Facebook trying to find some good feedback. I've got several friends in San Diego. I've got several that are now in Texas from there. And I got mixed reviews. Some people had never heard of this place. So let me ask you, Dante, have you ever heard of a place called Senor Burro?
No.
Okay, well, there you go. Senor Burro. You're not as popular as you think you are. So
hey, they
just want to make that clear. They probably are.
Did your other San Diego friends tell you Roberto's, Alberto's, Umberto's, Royberto's? It all started as a Roberto's or an Alberto's in San Diego. But what happened was, for tax reasons, the guy would franchise it out under different names. I don't understand why it happened, but it started out as an Alberto's, became Roberto's, and then Royberto's, Umberto's, and they're everywhere in California, Arizona, and Nevada now. So if you ever get one of those, run to it. It's the best Mexican food I've ever had in my life.
There you go. I just did an episode a couple weeks ago with a friend of mine who is a COO of a law firm, and we spent the entire hour dissecting food. So we determined San Antonio is the best food place for a lot of things, but we got to break it down. So enough about that.
Funny, man?
Like I said,
I should just tell people to make a show about food because we all have to do it. No one has to go to a stand-up place. Like, no, people could go, oh, he's interviewing a stand-up today, let's pass. but we all have to eat tonight. We all have to eat tomorrow. Man, we should have our own food podcast, you and I.
I agree. And that's definitely something we could do down the road for sure. But I have to disagree with you on this. I feel like people are going to say, oh man, we've got to stand up today. This is going to be interesting. This is not like some roofer or, some typical thing that Chuck talks to. So
Or they're expecting me to be funnier since I said I was a comedian and I haven't said anything funny yet. And they're like, God, is he just waiting for the right moment?
For what it's worth, I'm currently laughing on the inside. I'm just waiting for it to come out. So yeah, we're about to break out some funniness and we're going to have a great time. So let's start with, like you say, you were born on a base, or you were living on a base as a kid. Tell me a little bit about your experience there, because I've heard stories from various people. I live in Military City, so I've heard some stories about what it's like growing up as a military child. What was your experience like?
I loved it. I loved everything about it. It was the safest feeling in the world, because on a base, everyone knows each other and everyone takes care of each other's kids. And it's just, I don't know, I felt safer. I love being on bases now as an adult. They say after Bob Hope, I've performed for more U.S. troops than anyone on the planet. So I've been to a million bases and I do feel at home on them. I do. It's just a different community feeling. But my coming up was very interesting because my dad had an interesting job on the base. His job, he was a civil servant actually, but his job was to be in charge of visitors, the VIPs, so presidents, astronauts, singers, whatever. And, like I just posted a video yesterday of my dad walking with JFK. I posted, I keep finding all these great things in my garage with my dad with astronauts and, them signing a picture. And now I've got the picture and the picture of them signing it, and it's just what a crazy. I remember seeing drones flying over my base that looked like UFOs, but we all knew that they were just unmanned airplanes because they were testing them every day. But yeah, being on, especially that base, back then it was very secretive. Like that base invented a lot of big things and then silly things. Like, it takes credit for the Sidewinder missile, which is still in use. Like it's been one of the most effective missiles in our history. But that base also made urinal cakes. They make glow sticks.
Hey.
So ravers can have dance parties.
I was gonna say sometimes you need the glow sticks to get into the urinal and all the whole different set of scenario there. But that's quite interesting.
But yeah, I gotta say, because it was USO and just this little tiny town, like we had celebrities in my house almost every weekend. I remember my dad taking me to go see Ray Charles when I was a kid, and he signed stuff. I don't know if he liked us. He kept looking at his watch. Hey, there's the first joke, Chuck.
There we go. I love it. And for those who may not understand that joke, it's a roofing audience. Ray Charles is blind, you guys. So there you go. It sucks when you have to explain the punchline because you're not quite sure that some of your audience members are going to get the punchline, but I love it anyway. So you've had extensive contact with celebrities throughout your entire life. I saw the video of your dad with JFK. That was one of the coolest videos I've ever seen. And, I guess as a young child, and it's kind of funny because maybe not to that degree, certainly not to that degree, but when I was growing up as a young man in Columbus, Ohio, my parents owned a convenience store, which was right down the street from the news station in town. And back in the 80s, the lottery was different than it is nowadays. They had the only lottery machine in the area, and the lottery was very strict about where they'd put it. So my parents did quite well in the 80s off of, people and their gambling problems. And, but the cool thing about it was a lot of the people from the news station were degenerate gamblers, quite frankly. They would come down, and as a little boy, I learned how to run the machine. And I struck up a conversation with them. And next thing you know, they were bringing in people like, world champion boxers and guys from the football team and all that. So I kind of got to have a little bit of contact like that as well coming up, but definitely nothing like what you've got.
What an interesting thing, because if you just said my parents had a convenience store, blah, 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 no one would even think that even a celebrity would come in. But the fact that it was right next to a big news station that interviews celebrities every day, of course you guys would, especially if you're the only lottery in town. How cool.
Yeah, it was a different time back in the 80s. Now, that stuff doesn't exist anymore, but it was really a great time. And it's stuff that I remember still to this day. Obviously, we're talking about it, but tell me about this when you're a young boy, you're in there and you realize to yourself, maybe you didn't realize it for a while because it was just normal life. But at some point in time, did you realize, hey, my dad is somebody special because
I
these
don't
people
even
are
know.
people that they're acting different around?
Yeah, I think I always understood celebrity because like my parents, um, they were the entertainers of the town because of my dad's job. So they always had to be out at the officers club for every party, or they had to throw the big party on the base. Like I remember one time the, the the new captain of the base would always come in with a kid around my age. And I remember the kid going, I've got the biggest house on the base. And some kid said, no, actually, Dante's parents do. And he goes, of course you don't. My dad's the captain. And some kid was like, but his parents throw all the parties. They've added on to the home. And this kid came back the next day. He's like, I found out it is bigger. And I talked to my dad about it. And I don't know, like he was just a brat over the whole crazy thing. And it's not like we lived in a big house. It's just military housing that was small. And they just doubled our house because of the parties. But yeah, it was like a weird thing to understand that, I think it's actually what might have made me get it. It is what made me get into stand-up. So I had always wanted to be a stand-up comic, but the fact that my father could bring that to my little base and show me right in front of my own eyes that the people from television could show up in front of us made me realize if they could come here, I could go anywhere. So that's why at 7, after I had seen an improv group come through our USO tour, I turned to my little buddy. His name was Jared McQuarrie, and his dad was in Vietnam or something. And I said, hey, man, you want to do stand up with me? And he goes, yep, let's do it. So we wrote some jokes and we started doing it. I even remember our first joke. We pretended to be a television. We both start out with our backs turned and we tell the crowd, we're going to turn the channels on a TV for you. And I would turn around first. And remember, it's the 70s. So I'd go, hi, I'm Farrah Fawcett. And my favorite food is, and I'd turn around and he would turn around and go, Alpo dog food. It's and then he'd say something that would lead to my joke and I'd turn around. But yeah, those are my first stand-up jokes that I ever wrote. And then eventually my parents moved us to San Diego when I was 12. And by around the time I was 15, I turned to another kid named Gerald Wolf. And I said, Gerald, you want to do stand-up? And he goes, yeah, let's do it. He was in my drama class. And so we started doing it. And I remember I went to the Comedy Store one night and I wanted to ask how you get up there. And they go, well, you guys are too young. And I look over and the doorman is a friend of mine. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's famous. Do you know who Faison Love is? Have you ever seen Friday?
Yes.
He plays Big Worm in Friday. He's the manager in Elf, the big heavy-set black dude.
Playing with my emotions, Smokey. I gotcha.
Yes. So he and I went to junior high and high school together, right? And so when I show up to the Comedy Store, he's the doorman. And I know he's only like 19 and I'm like 15, right? Or he's like 18 and I'm 50. He's a senior when I was in 10th grade. And I said to him, I thought you had to be 21 to work here. He's like, shut the fuck up. He goes, I look 50. You keep your mouth shut. He goes, I'm going to tell them that you're 20 so that when you turn like 17 or whatever it is in a year, that, they'll believe, and I went, okay, fine. So I got a fake ID. And by the time I turned like 17, I showed, I walk in there and they threw a big birthday party for me for my 21st. And one of the guys turned to me and goes, hey, man, remember this day because you'll never be 21 again. And someone who knew my real age went, you never know. You never know.
Oh, okay. So Big Worm got you into your very first gig here at a major comedy place. This is already a terrific start to this the story.
So then let's go from there.
Yeah.
So then Big Worm says to me, you need to start playing black rooms, right? Faison. So he takes me to a place called Smokey Gaines nightclub, and I start doing very well there. The first night was terrible. They hated me. I didn't know what I was doing. I'm sure everything I said sounded racist. It was terrible. And then he goes, hey, just watch the shows for a month and then come back. And that's what I did. And I went, oh, now I get it. They didn't want to hear about this or that. They wanted to hear this joke or that joke because everyone's different. And I got it. And I sort of went, okay. So the reason I'm telling you all of this is eventually that would lead to me winning a bunch of BET awards because I got really good in front of Black audiences. And when I moved to LA, immediately this show on BET called Comic View started, and DL Hughley was a host at first, and then Cedric and all these, Cedric the Entertainer. But anyway, I ended up being like the most famous white guy on BET in the 90s. They gave me a sitcom called The Blackberry Inn. I have a bunch of BET awards in my garage. I always hate when people say that their awards are in their garage, but I almost hate it more when they say, yeah, they're displayed in my house. I don't know which one to do. You know what I mean? Like if you come over to my house and you see my 1990s BET awards displayed, aren't you going to be like, look at this asshole? Or
No.
you walk into my garage and go, why are your BET awards in your garage? Like I'm not trying to disrespect them. I just don't know what to do with them.
I appreciate that. But yes, I would not think that. If I walked into your house, I'd think this dude's got BET awards. There's some pretty cool stuff going on here. So I definitely respect that. Let's talk a little bit about the very, very early days. I love what you just said. The first time you go in there, you bombed. You didn't feel like you had it going on. So
you know what was funny, man? I was trying to make up a joke. I had a joke about Martin Luther King. It was a funny joke. But the way I started it, because I was nervous in front of black people at the time, I was like, hey, you guys, this next joke is about your leader. And someone went, Oprah? And then like the whole crowd laughed. And then I was like, no, Martin Luther King, like, get off the stage. And I was like, oh, man, like it was all downhill from there. All of it was downhill from there. But then I figured it out, like I said, and I got really good in front of black rooms. And it was a different time. And you know, like I think I surprised you with the big worm story. So listen to this one. This one's pretty interesting. So I ended up going to United States International University in San Diego for college. I went there on a full drama scholarship. As long as I taught acting and stand-up in the summers, I would maintain my free whatever, it was very low money. It was I don't know, whatever it was. I got the best scholarship for acting, and then my friend Eric Bishop, I think he was also in the acting program, but he got a full scholarship for music, so he was in playing piano all the time. Anyway, one day, Eric's girlfriend, I don't remember her name. I was working at an AMC theater in Fashion Valley, San Diego, and she and her friend come over to my work, and she goes, hey, don't tell Eric I'm here. He's very jealous, but he wants to get into stand-up comedy, and I know you've been a comic since high school, and you know, blah, blah, blah. Can you help him get into stand-up? Absolutely. Just don't tell him I was here. He's crazy jealous. The next day, I drive into USIU, and as I'm pulling into the lot, Eric is pacing towards my car quickly. I went, oh no, what's happening? He's this very handsome black guy, missing a front tooth. But when any man is racing towards your car, you're pretty sure he's going to punch you. It's not going to be fun. So I get out and I'm like, what is it? And he's like, hey, why was my girlfriend? And I get it. Come on. And I said, I said, hey, I promised her I wouldn't tell you, but here's the truth. And I told him the whole story I just told you. So immediately he stops being angry. His shoulders drop and he goes, can you help me? And I said, yeah. So I think I called the Comedy Store and they're like, yeah, we don't have time for a couple of weeks to put him on. I said, what if you give him half of my time? Can we do that? Yes. So he went up his first time and he did great. I remember this kid, Walter, came with us. Faison came. They all really liked him. They all became friends, right? Walter ended up becoming, I think he was the blue Power Ranger. He was the black one. When those came out, he was and Eric, what happened to him? I didn't see him the next year. The next year when I went back to college, I was like, where's Eric? And people were like, oh, he's on a new show called In Living Color. And so I was doing stand-up at night, and I'm like, there's no way he's on In Living Color. I don't even know what this show is. So at night at the Comedy Store, I'd turn on the TV, and I'd see all these names, Jim Carrey, blah, 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 and, you know, and then a few names at the bottom, and I'd look, and no Eric Bishop. And then one day someone said, you're looking for Eric Bishop. He changed his name to Jamie Foxx. That's the problem. And so I look, and sure enough, they show his picture and it says Jamie Foxx. So I call him up and I'm like, did you change your name? And he explains to me that I guess he was trying to get into some comedy contest or something, and they weren't accepting women. So he sent in a resume changing his name to Jamie Foxx, and they accepted him and he won the whole thing. And so he had to keep the name because that led to him being on In Living Color and everything else. So pretty crazy, right?
Yes, and Jamie Foxx is actually from East Texas over here. That
He sure is.
he's done a lot of stuff up there. Yes. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I know that. I think he had lived with his grandma or something when he came to college. That's from wherever that was. Yeah.
Okay, so you've got some really some interesting connections throughout your young adulthood. You've gotten yourself into some amazing situations and met some incredible people. Tell me a little bit more about your experiences. Like I said, there's like 7 million things on here. I see here you've been a comedian for 37 years. This says that you've boxed Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, all right. So it's not like we were in some big boxing ring together, but here's what happened. So I used to be an amateur boxer in San Diego and also when I was younger. And one day, this girl from high school said, "I know that you're a boxer. My dad has a grocery, or not a grocery store, like a CVS or something up the hill." And she goes, "Muhammad Ali is going to be there signing stuff to get people to come into the store. Do you want to meet him?" And I was like, "Of course I do." So I was actually, when she called, I was in the middle of training. I had on all my clothes, but I grabbed extra stuff. I was like, "Let's get, a couple things for him to sign." So I grab my gloves and I head up to the place. And the minute he sees my gloves and that I'm dressed in like everything boxing, he's like, "You're a boxer?" He's like, "You want to fight me?" I'm like, "Of course I want to fight you." He goes, "Let's go out into the parking lot, get everyone to come out there and we'll put on a little show for them." So we go out there and he's like, "All right, before we fight, I want you to hit me. I need you to hit me as hard as you can." And I punched him, right? Bam! I hit Muhammad Ali. Everyone laughs because he doesn't even move. And I didn't even hit him that hard. I thought we're playing around in a parking lot. That's when he pulls a Muhammad Ali on me and he goes, "Is that as hard as you can hit?" And I said, "Absolutely not." He goes, "Here's what's going to happen. We're not going to have a full fight. You're going to hit me one time as hard as you can. And if you don't, I'm going to hit you as hard as I can." And I was like, "Okay, I will definitely hit you as hard as I can now." And in my mind, in my little, teenage mind, I also thought, boy, if I hit him hard enough, he might say, "Hey, let's help his, his boxing career or whatever." So I do know that I can punch, even at whatever I was, 16, because my boxing manager at the time would go, "There's no one that can hit harder than you. You may not be the fastest." He goes, "You're like George Frazier. You can get hit all night, but they better run if you get one good hit in, because they're in trouble." So I knew I could punch him. And I hit him as hard as I could, and it was like punching a brick wall. My glove instantly exploded on the man. I've never seen a boxing glove explode in my life. Ever. Not before, not after, not since. Anyway, it exploded on his chest. He laughed. He hugged me. That was the end of everything. He signed both gloves. He signed everything I was wearing. I still have all those pieces. I have an exploded glove also in my garage next to my BET awards, signed by Muhammad Ali. And then later in life, I was lucky. His daughter, May May, was a comedian. And so all during the 90s, I was famous on BET. And here's Muhammad Ali coming to the Comedy Store all the time to see his daughter. And I would always go up to him and remind him. And eventually we had a friendship. And I got to know him. And it was wonderful. It was I never expected that to have but that's kind of how my life has been. When I first moved to LA when I was 21, Sam Kinison was probably the first celebrity to take me under his wing. And I remember him dying right away. Like, I moved up in 91, and by 92, I think, is when he passed. If you guys don't know who he was one of the most famous stand-up comics of the 80s and 90s, and he was a screamer who was great. He was great. But I remember he introduced me to a lot of celebrities. Like, that's how I met Corey Feldman and Ron Jeremy. And I ended up being really close to Corey Feldman. He and I played poker together for like 20, I don't know how long, 10 years, and we're still keep in touch. I ended up later in life, like for 10 years, or no, 5 years probably, I was Ron Jeremy's manager. Never for porn. This was like towards the end of his career. I was getting him a lot of, just movies, or, 2020 wanted to do an interview about, something or whatever. That's what I got him.
It's pretty outstanding, though. So Ron Jeremy, as your guy, you've boxed Muhammad Ali. You knew Jamie Foxx and Big Worm. and Corey Feldman. Like, so far, this is pretty amazing, but I feel like we're just scratching the surface. So
right, I haven't even, like, here's the weird part. Like, none of this is that fantastical, right? I mean, I guess boxing Muhammad Ali could be considered that, and maybe meeting these celebrities or going to high school with one or college, sure. But I think you've hit on something. When I started writing my book, I realized, like, I thought it was going to be, you know, because like the Ron Jeremy thing is kind of important because he was part of this Me Too thing and ended up going to jail. And I dropped him immediately. The minute he went to jail, I was like, I want nothing to do with this. I don't know what you did, but if you did any of those things, I hope you rot in jail. And unfortunately for him, he had Alzheimer's when he went into jail. And I do know this because I filmed him every day, and some days he didn't know his name. And that's why, like, towards the end of his life, or not the end of his life, but before he went to jail, I couldn't even book him and stuff. I said, man, you're going to have to live off of your, you know, millions that you made off your book and everything else, because you can't work, you know, like if you don't know your name, I can't send you out. So yeah, even when he did get in trouble, we were hardly working with each other at that point, just because at that point I was just setting up doctor's appointments and trying to tell his family, you got to come take care of this guy.
Man, I'll tell you, that's kind of sad, really, that at the later stages that a guy like that, I mean, he was a hero to millions. Let's be honest, hero to millions. This guy did stuff that, like, you know, some of us could only dream of. And
sure, he had sex with more women than any other human that ever lived. You know, he appeared in more pornos than anyone. He appeared in more regular movies. Try to go to Ron Jeremy's IMDb page, and what happens to your computer is it slows down, because it is the most packed IMDb page. Like, you know, even the biggest actor on earth maybe has like 150 movie credits. This man has over 2,000 regular and over 2,000, you know, X-rated. So when you go to his page, everything is just like slowed down, like you're on AOL 2.0.
Ron Jeremy, there you go. He's an American treasure. I'm sorry to hear that he has Alzheimer's, or that he's, you know, no longer has his faculties about him.
I own all of his social media, so if anyone pays me enough, I will say hi to you from Ron Jeremy.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. For the right price, you can get a cameo from Ron Jeremy, a happy birthday wish. Yeah, Ron Jeremy. You can get a happy birthday wish, or a happy Mother's Day, whatever things Ron Jeremy would say. So I appreciate that. Let's just keep going on down your list here. Okay, you've already told us about the Hollywood people. You hold world records. Tell me about your world records.
Okay, so it's not necessarily, well, I guess I might have some world records, sure. But one that is more of like, I'm the only person on earth that does this. So there's something I'm going to tell you that no one probably knows about, because I'm the only person who has this job. So I don't know if you've ever heard of a warm-up comedian. If you go to a TV show taping or something like that, you know, let's say the Tonight Show in the old days when, you know, Jay Leno or whoever was there. Someone will come out and be like, hey guys, let's get the energy up, and I'm going to tell a few jokes, and then I'm going to introduce Jay Leno or whoever. That's what a warm-up does. So what ended up happening was some guy realized that you could make money selling extras to movies, because what would happen was a movie would get, like, let's say Anger Management films at a giant stadium in New York, right? They're filming the Yankees, and Adam Sandler's supposed to be at a game, and blah, blah, blah. They only pay 100 extras. That's all you can afford, because it's a lot of money to pay 100 extras. They make $1,000 a day maybe, or more. And so when you have 14,000 people in a stadium, what you do is you hire a company that will fill that stadium for you. And then that company became very famous and ended up only hiring me to be the warm-up comic to the 14,000 people for a week, and give them, you know, he would say to production, look, if we're on Batman, give him one of the Batmobiles to give away. Or if we're working on this movie, you know, get them to sign a poster, have everybody from the crew, and we'll give out 20 of those today to the audience. And those are worth probably $2,000 because, you know, they're the first ones ever, you know, whatever it was. But so on about 100 big movies, I was the warm-up guy and got to watch them. Like, I was there the day Jim Carrey was playing Andy Kaufman and faked getting hurt and had to go to the hospital in an ambulance. Like, I was there the whole time. I was there on every Adam Sandler movie. Anyway, I did this for about 20 years, and it was crazy. What a crazy thing to do, to just entertain these extras on movie sets. And I was sitting there and just hanging out with all the actors all day. And I'm the one in the middle of the stadium with the God mic. So everyone's focused on me all day. It was crazy.
Man, I'll tell you what, that right there is awesome. And I am envious of that position because I think that's something that I would excel at and I would enjoy it. But there's only one guy on earth that's done it and does it. So, you know, you've got that one on lockdown. I can definitely appreciate it. And seeing some of that stuff from that side has got to be just, whoa, you know, like the special effects and things that go on in movies and how they shoot that stuff is crazy. And you've been there firsthand for a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, and you know, I gotta say, and I'm fine with this because I also have an entertainment company now, like you said, and I'm a manager. But I get booked less and less. I used to do about 5 to 10 a year, and now I do maybe 1 every couple years. It's because of CGI. They don't need 14,000 people to show up anymore. They only need 200, and they'll film them here, and then they'll take that image and place it everywhere. And that's what they do. Basically, if you watch a movie and you look in the background, find the yellow shirt, and then you'll see the yellow shirt sitting in every stand because all they did was CGI those same people everywhere.
There you go.
And if you look at 80s and 90s movies, I can give you another couple of tricks. First of all the streets are going to be wet. For whatever reason, in the 80s and 90s, every street had to be wet at all times. And then if you look at background actors, at first, they start off as blow-up dolls. They were blow-up dolls with hats on, but like actual like porno blow-up dolls. But some guy just would buy a whole bunch and put clothes on them. Eventually, they became sort of like cardboard cutouts of people, and so you'd see those. But if you stop frame movies from like the 2000s and look in stadium scenes, look at the crowd, and about every 5th person is a cardboard cutout or a blow-up doll.
There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, that's something I would have never known had I not done the episode today. So this is giving me a lot of insight. I'm learning a lot. I'm very entertained by our conversation so far. And I'm not even halfway down your list of things that you put on here. So let's...
are you avoiding the death one? Because if you are, I can tell you it's actually not a sad story. It says I killed someone.
No, actually, that was going to be my next question. Tell me about the time you killed someone.
So here's the thing about this. It's something I didn't talk about for a long time because it was an accident and no one knew it. And it's actually, now it's very funny to me. And you're like, how could killing someone be funny? Well, I'll tell you. My mom was my best friend and we had the best times together, but she got cancer and was dying. And that's okay. It's called life. No big deal. But what happened was my dad called me one day and said, your poor mom just went into her cancer coma, which if anyone's gone through cancer before, you know that's the end of life. She'll be there maybe an hour or maybe 24 hours, but that's it. You don't get to say any more words at that point. And he goes, so you better hurry your butt home. And luckily they were like 2 hours from my house and I drove to my mom as quickly as I could. And my wife and dad gave me some time alone with my mom, and I knelt down by her bed and I kissed her and talked to her, and I heard her take her last breath. And when I stood up, I was kneeling down at her side. I felt something under my knees as I got up, and I heard psh. I realized I was on her oxygen tank the entire time. And I was like, oh my God, I just killed my mom. And I had such guilt over it. And then like 2 months later, I like confessed it to my daughter and my wife, and they both started laughing. And they go, Grandma would have thought that was the funniest thing ever. Grandma's probably telling that story all the time up in heaven. And then I felt better about it. I was like, you're right. It is funny. And it's not like I took 2 hours off her life. I maybe killed her 20 minutes early. But the fact that I was sad about it is kind of funny to me. But now that they say it, they are right. My mom thought everything like that was funny. Like she would have told that story to everybody. Everyone. So it's you know, I don't regret it anymore, but that was something. But it also says I saved lives. And some lady said to me, because sometimes I can post that I saved a life, because sometimes this lady said, you're always in the right place at the right time. I feel like God places you there to either save people or bear witness. And this lady didn't know me. She was just some random lady who I guess follows me on Instagram or something. But what she was talking about, like, during COVID, I had some people pulled over in front of my house and I filmed these police videos that went very viral. And so during COVID, I just thought, you know what? I can start filming things. If I see an accident, maybe I'll film it. Maybe I'll film this. Maybe I'll film that. So I see that on my scanner, I hear that there was a man who's committing suicide off of a building. So I drive over there and I see the fire department and the police. And sure enough, this man's on a roof and his friend is like, he comes up to me. He's like, hey, man, I've been trying to tell these cops, you know, that this guy's going to kill himself. And, you know, they're not taking it very seriously. And I don't know if it's because he's homeless but he's my friend and he's a really good guy. And I think he's going to, you know, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just sitting in my car and I'm filming everybody. And it's a lot of action. I just thought, hey, worst case, maybe I'll give it to the news company for free or whatever. Then all of a sudden, the fire department leaves. And then the police leave. And the man's up on the roof. And I went over to his friend. I said, what happened? He goes, they abandoned him. They go, he didn't want to come down and they didn't want to rescue him. So they said, it is what it is. And they left. So I was filming the whole time. I just yelled up. I said, tell your friend, and I mean this, I'll give you the money right now in front of him. Tell him I'm buying you guys lunch and beer and to come down. And if he wants to go back up there afterwards and kill himself, he can do whatever he wants. But I bet you after lunch and a couple of beers, he's going to feel better. And sure enough, after me and this guy yelled at him for a couple minutes, he was down. And I'm sure he's alive today. I've saved people choking on stuff where, I knew the Heimlich, but then the worst one ever, and this is probably the one where that lady said, you're always in the right place at the right time. I went to Echo Park Lake here in LA, and my wife gets her hair done by this lady who lives on the lake. And as I was driving there, she texted me, I'm done, come get me. As I'm driving there, there's a Hispanic man in the middle of the street holding a limp baby. And all these cars, it's such heavy traffic, they're slowly swerving around him. Like they don't have time to save a baby. So I have a convertible, and I was like, get in. And I started doing the Heimlich on this baby. But I don't have time because he's screaming, get to a hospital. So I start saying to him, hold her upside down, push on her stomach, all these things. And I think that there's a language barrier happening. So basically I said, hey, Siri, get me to the closest hospital. There's one not that far. I start driving. It's two-way traffic. I start driving on the quiet, Siri, quiet. I'm so sorry. Now she heard me. Quiet, Siri.
She's
Siri,
smart.
No, now she's trying to get me to a hospital. Hey, Siri. Hey, Siri. Hey, Siri. Hey, Siri. Shh. Quiet. Stop.
I love it. I'm glad to know that little bitch does that to you too.
Yes. So I drive on the opposite side of the road. Cars are pulling off. I'm flashing and honking. This man's crying. The baby's dying. As I pull into an intersection, I see a cop about to go through the light. I pull up in front of his car and I stop him. I grab the baby, hand it to the man. We both get out. We hand it to the cop. I realize I've stopped traffic completely at this point. I get back in my car. I flip around and I just take off. I figure I did my duty. When I get to my wife a minute later, she's like, where were you? What's going on? What happened? And at that moment, I started just scream crying for about 5 minutes and couldn't speak. I thought I watched a baby die in my car. And then I told her the whole story. She's such a sweet lady. I don't know how she did it, but she combed the TV, and I guess it made it onto the news because it showed me running out of a car and handing this cop a baby, and instantly he flipped it, hit her like I said to this guy to do, and he wasn't, anyway, saved her life. She lived, and thank God. But man, that was terrifying. But my whole life feels like that every day. People are like, hey, you remember when you did this? I'm like, I don't remember anything. I remember the highlights, the goods and the bads, because they're so crazy sometimes.
Yeah, man, I'll tell you what, that right there is that's heroic, but it's also something that you never want to have to go through and you never want to experience it. And
I have PTSD still, even though she lived. I still have PTSD from that.
Yeah, and that's something that you'll never forget. So thank you for that. And I mean, like they say, you're in the right place at the right time. I get that on occasion myself, but not to that extent for sure. So I like that. You got a lot of stuff on here, my friend. I see
I know, it's
here.
crazy. I know. I ran for mayor of Los Angeles.
Yeah, let's talk about that. What is your experience running for mayor of Los Angeles? You're not running for mayor of Podunk, Iowa. This is a pretty well-known community, and you find yourself somehow running for mayor. Tell me about it.
So, honestly, to be honest with you, I would love to maybe run for mayor someday. But when I did it back in 2001, I was doing it not to help my career in any way. I was doing it because I've always been very political. And back then, there wasn't real internet. And so the best way for me to use my voice and be seen was go, all right, I'm a pretty well-known comedian. If I run for mayor, they're going to put me on all the big debates. If I have real issues that I bring and I'm not acting like some dumb comedian trying to be funny at all the debates, I'll be taken serious. So I really ran for mayor. I had to pay all the entry fees. I had to go to classes. They make you go to, what are they called? Not integrity. It's something like that. These classes where you learn about.
It's not integrity. I've learned that about our.
Trust me, yeah. But it's something like that where you're supposed to learn all these things that you can and can't do. But anyway, I did everything right, and I got into all the debates, and I was the guy who all the news wanted to come up to afterwards and be like, when all those candidates wouldn't speak up about, this or that, you were the only one saying that we need to fix this and fix that. And at one point, I turned to this guy named James Hahn, who looked like Central Casting, put him as our mayor. And I said, hey, man, you're going to win. It's not going to be me. I'm just making your life tough so that you have to do all these things. And he goes, all right. And sure enough, when he became mayor, I only asked for like 4 major things, but they fixed all of them. Here's what they were. At the 405 and the 101, there wasn't a carpool lane. I wanted it in all directions. I got it. Where we hold the Academy Awards now at Hollywood Highland was a empty mall for years that they stopped building, and it was filled with just crack zombies. And it was making tourists not want to come. And I said, that has to either be torn down or construction moves on. One of the two. Another one is we had hooker problems. And this was, again, before the internet. And, I said, look, you have loitering laws. Start enforcing them. If someone is standing by a payphone all night, enforce a loitering law. So all these things went into effect immediately. And I got everything out of it that I wanted to. So it was worth my time. And I am very political. And I have backed a lot of candidates. And I do probably say more than I should. Like, if I think that there is an unfairness in the world and I say it and you disagree with that, what can I do? And I've lost a lot of work over it. I play in the South. And if I was filming the police doing bad things during COVID, I'm sure there was some booker in the South that was like, well, I'm never blah, blah, blah. When in reality, I love the police. My daughter was actually in the police, trying to go to the police academy at the time. I was just trying to clean up some corruption. That's all. I don't hate cops. I disliked the dirty cops. I didn't even hate them. I just disliked them. I was trying to expose their behavior. There's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. Nothing at all. And it's to be commended, quite honestly. And I watch these videos all the time, and I think to myself, I never think to turn on my phone, but my gosh, these guys turn on the phone and it's like, an entirely different situation for some people. The minute I
turn on my phone, they got weird with me every time. Like if you go to my Instagram, it's Dante the comic. I think one of the videos is a preview of a documentary I'm starting to work on. And it was about all of the police videos that I filmed. And man, sometimes I'll just be walking by with a group of people, but because I'm the one filming, they'll grab me. Sir, you're jaywalking right now. I'm like, everyone's walking. I'm like, fine, give me a ticket. I'll film the whole thing. And then like, fine, sir, just please walk, because I just don't back down, someone said to me, this was very interesting, actually. So I go to a therapist because everyone in my family died. When I met my wife 17 years ago, I must have had 30 extra relatives, including parents, brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, cousins. I'm down to 3. So I lost everybody. So I was going to therapy for a long time. And man, sometimes you get gold in therapy. Here's what she said to me. She goes, you believe in right and wrong so much. Why is that? And I said, man, when I was growing up in the 70s, my parents were out every night entertaining. And so I was watching 70s television, things like Good Times, The Brady Bunch, Happy Days, What's Happening. And I said, she was a younger therapist, she's probably in her 30s or something. I said, you don't know, but back then, every TV show, especially a sitcom, was a lesson. don't record the Doobie Brothers. It's illegal. Don't, throw a ball in the house. Don't do this. Don't do, it was always good and bad. And she goes, well, if that's how you were raised, how would you say that those TV shows are still affecting you today? And I went, oh my God. Rerun from What's Happening used to be my best friend and opening act before he died. The guy who played Dwayne on What's Happening is one of my clients. Jimmy Walker from Good Times is one of my clients. She goes, oh, so you've collected your parents over the years. My head exploded. I was like, this is what I'm paying you for, lady. This is what I pay you for.
That's deep right there. That is absolutely on point. And wow, that is a pretty cool way of putting that into perspective.
Because I didn't ever think of that. I was like, she's right. I do have Jimmy Walker and Haywood Nelson. And what happened? Was I seeking out my parents? Maybe I was. Thank you for saying that, lady.
No doubt. That's pretty amazing. And it's just another wrinkle in the story that you've got. This is an amazing story. So we're at 45 minutes. I told you I like to keep it around an hour. So here's what we got. I see two other things I definitely want to find out the full stories on. Number one, Tupac? I
did.
Yeah. Tell me about Tupac.
Tupac was a nice guy. So back in the 90s when I was on BET, I was hanging out at the Comedy Store and or working as a doorman. And everyone was there back then. Everyone was there in the 90s. I mean, Richard Pryor was there every night. Jim Carrey was there all the time. Eddie Murphy, Arsenio, Andrew Dice Clay, Chris Rock, anyone and everyone. But yeah, Tupac, I used to run this Tuesday night comedy night at the Comedy Store upstairs in the belly room. And eventually I gave it to someone else who turned it into something called Fat Tuesdays. And they just made a documentary about that. And I think I'm even in the documentary, someone said, but from, clips of the 90s, not me being interviewed now, I would know that. Anyway, so I ran this very popular black show on Tuesday nights in the belly room of the Comedy Store. And every week, the audience was filled with like MC Hammer, Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, Tupac, Tretch from Naughty by Nature. Like every big black star was there every night, and it was insane. And Tupac, and I would say probably, Tupac and what's his name from Public Enemy? Yeah, boy.
Flava Flav.
Yeah, those two guys out of the rappers were probably my better friends, I would say. Obviously Tupac died, and I don't see Flava Flav. I haven't seen him since he got me into his concert at the House of Blues here in Hollywood about 16 years ago, and it was the craziest experience. Like, I thought he was just going to get me a ticket. Next thing I know, we're just walking through the backstage. I'm hanging out with everybody, and then the music starts. He's like, oh, I need to start in a minute. Come with me. So he takes me just outside the stage doors, sits me in front of Mike Tyson and David Spade in better seats. And he's like, all right, I'll be back. And sure enough, after the concert, he's like, come on back. Yeah, that was a wild night. But that was the last time I saw him. And we were hanging out a lot. Who knows? Wow. But he also got that flavor of love afterwards, I think, and other things.
I gotta say, you know what? I was listening to a radio show the other day, and they were talking about Flava Flav, and I don't remember who the person was, but it was a similar story. And they're like, Flava Flav was like a super guy. He took me back here. We were hanging out, doing all this stuff, and then he just left, and you never saw the guy again. So maybe that's Flava Flav's MO. That's what he does.
Sure. And guess what? I bet you if he saw me tomorrow, we'd pick up right where we were. Because maybe I do that with people too. Who knows?
I love it though, because that's very it's unique, and you can say, hey man, Flava Flav, and I bet he still would know you, because whatever I was listening to on the radio, I think it was on Howard Stern maybe, and they were saying, he would still remember. It was John Hine from Howard Stern, as a matter of fact. Now I remember, and he said, yeah, Flava Flav was a nice guy, and we could talk, and he would know me, and I think that's pretty interesting, because Flava Flav is not one of those guys that you would think of in that light, and why not?
I loved he was great. I'd still hang out with him anytime. I loved Flav. During also that 90s time period, two more people were kind of interesting at the time, Prince and Little Richard. So Little Richard, I became good friends with because he lived at the Hyatt right next door to the Comedy Store. And at night I'd go play pool in the Hyatt bar. And he probably knew me from BET and would come down and play pool with me or hang out or whatever. But I would say at least 3 nights a week, I was hanging out with Little Richard for years and years. And then I was on a show called America's Funniest People. It came on after America's Funniest Home Videos or before it. I don't know if you remember. It was Tawny Katane and the guy who really pissed off Alanis Morissette, whatever his name was from Full House.
Yeah, it's Dave Coulier. Absolutely.
Dave Coulier. Yeah. Anyway, what was I talking? Oh, so anyway, I'm on this show, and as they walk me through the backstage, because I'd done this bit on there. I think I was there for something called the Wizard of Oz that I actually won the grand prize that day. And I still do the Wizard of Oz in my act. It's like 5 impressions. Like I do De Niro, and whatever, it doesn't matter. So as we're walking backstage, all of a sudden, Little Richard is like, Dante, I guess he's the musical guest, and he pulls me aside. But I almost lost everything that day because the producer's like, you can't talk to him. You can't talk to anyone. It's a game show. We have game show rules. So after like an hour, they're like, it's okay. They didn't say anything to each other that was, but anyway, I won. It doesn't matter. But I believe he had a crush on me. That's why I think he was, same with Prince. That's what I was going to bring up about Prince. Prince, he probably had a little crush on me. I saw a bus pull up one night in front of the Comedy Store, and it looked like Halle Berry came out. It was just this skinny woman with short hair. Apparently that's when Prince had that short haircut, because I realized it was him, and he must have just come to see me because I was next in there. I went up, I did my show, and afterwards I see him go to the bathroom, and I was a giant Prince fan. I went to the bathroom, and he's done with the urinal, says hi to me as he walks by. I go use the urinal. I hear him blow his nose, and as I turn around, I see him throw it. It misses the trash can. I'm like, oh, I'm picking that up later. And then he sets down his drink. I was like, that's mine as well. I think I gave them all to some waitress who freaked out later too. But anyway, he stopped me and he's like, I just want to tell you, I came to see you and I thought you were great. I was like, oh, thanks. So then I go to a Prince concert like a year later. After the show, me and my ex-wife, we were about 10 people down, and we had sat pretty close up, and I could have sworn he saw me a couple times. I even turned, I'm like, I think he recognized me. And like I said, being on BET back then, most black stars knew who I was because I was literally on TV 3 times a day, every day for years, the stand-up and the sitcom. So I was on there all the time. But so anyway, so I go to this concert, and afterwards he's what are those people who knock on your door on Sundays? A Jehovah's Witness. And he's giving out the, whatever it's called. I don't know what's not Watch. Is it Watchtower? It's something. He's giving out these magazines after his concert, and he'll sign them or whatever. But anyway, he's about to start. He looks down the line, sees me, comes directly to me. Did you enjoy the concert? Yes, I did. Well, I just wanted to give this to you personally. I was like, oh, thank you. And then he goes back to the top. Everyone looked at me like, who are you? Even my ex was like, what just happened? And then I was like, I think he has a crush on me. The man came to see my show, and now 2 years later, he recognized me in the crowd. I'm pretty sure, it was just, it felt like a crush, if that makes sense.
I guess if you're going to have a celebrity secret crush, Prince is probably the best one because the story is unparalleled, Halle Berry would have been boring compared to that.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't ever act on it, but I don't think he ever acted on anything. Who knows what, man? I don't know. I didn't really know him. I just met him a couple times in my life.
That's awesome. So
yeah.
You've covered the gamut here. There's one last thing on this that I definitely want to hear about, and then we'll kind of wind it down a little. And if we go a little bit over, I hope that's okay, because
anything you want.
This has gone so amazingly. This has been one of the most fun episodes I've ever had. And I looked up and it's already 54 minutes. And I thought, wow, man, I thought we were maybe 12, 13 in. So you have a very well-known follower on your social media, someone that the world knows, someone who was one of the great men in American history, former president. Tell us a little bit about the
Well,
Instagram.
If you can guess from my BET fame, which president it might be, I am followed by Barack Obama. And I don't know if that happened before he was president, after, because I didn't really know him before that. But I just know that basically what happened one day was I realized there was a button that says like verified followers, or at least it used to before Elon bought up the company. So it would say verified. So if you hit verified who follows you, you could watch and see all the verified people. And back then, everyone was a celebrity. So I was going through and my wife was like, oh my God, Britney Spears follows you. Oh my God, this person follows you. And then all of a sudden I hear her scream and she went, Barack Obama follows you? How does Barack Obama follow you? And I was like, I don't know. Who knows how, but he does and he still does. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, I think when a lot of those videos went viral also during COVID, a lot of celebrities started following me. I remember Rihanna reached out to me and was like, hey, thanks for filming some of these police videos. I follow you now. If you ever need anything, just hit me. I was like, this is crazy. I do want to say a couple of quick things to people outside of Hollywood so you have a better understanding. Most people are just like you. If you think people are from Hollywood, we're not. I'm from a little tiny Navy base and I live here. My wife grew up in Vegas. Everyone I know is from Iowa or Nebraska. We're not some Hollywood elite. We don't think we're better than anyone. You know, we're not eating people's babies. Where are we getting these fucking babies? You know what I mean? Like, here's why I can tell you people aren't eating babies, because we believe in science, and eating a baby isn't going to make me younger, or else everyone would be eating babies all the time. So yeah, I mean, all these like silly things. And if there are pedophiles, there's probably as many at your work or anywhere else. It's just the odds are the same, you know, but I've never seen anything bad. And as a matter of fact, after Sam Kinison died, I think I've seen drugs 2 or 3 times in Hollywood ever since. I'm sure people do drugs, just not around me. Like, I'm not seeing, like, I don't know what people think Hollywood necessarily is, but I'm in it. Like, this is my house in Hollywood, and I interact basically with my family most of the day, and I talk to a lot of people on the phone. And other than that, that's how most people are. So if they think that there's some big conspiracy, I think it's very funny, because there's nothing, I mean, I'm sure there's weird stuff everywhere, but it's not like people are making it out to be.
Well, you've got to sensationalize it. It's Hollywood, right? That's what it's all about. So it's got to be the craziest thing ever, because a guy like me in San Antonio has to believe that. And, you know, that's the mystique. That's what leads to that magic. And
look,
you know,
no one's better than anybody. Like, I don't think a celebrity is better than you or me, or I find it interesting because we all know who we're talking about. And as ants, to find famous ants, you go, oh, I know that famous ant. You know what I mean? That's all it is. We're just ants, man. Who cares if someone's famous or not? And I think that that's actually why celebrities like me, because part of my book is I'm known by celebrities and less by the public. I'm only known by enough people in the public to sell out my 300 seats a night. And that's all I need to do. It's fine by me. But every town I go to, those 300 seats are sold out for 5, 6, 10 shows, whatever it is. Fine with me. But it is interesting, right? Like, I have the kind of life of like the Dos Equis guy or something, where it's like this impossible, incredible life where you go, but I don't even know who this guy is. What do you mean you had a sitcom? What do you mean all these celebrities follow you?
it is amazing.
At the end of my book, here's what I write. I go, man, this is the last line. I'll just misquote it. I say, I've done all these things and I'm just some kid from China Lake, California. Imagine what you could do. Because it's true.
Isn't that amazing? And you're spot on.
Special. Right.
You were there and you experienced what life had, and you didn't shy away from it, which is important. And you've lived an amazing life. The Dos Equis guy, wish he was as interesting as you, my friend. And I mean, this has been absolutely amazing. I can't thank you enough. So as we start to wind down the show, I usually ask my guests, you know, well, tell me how people can follow you. You're a professional comedian. You're out on the road. You're doing shows. You just said you're hitting, you know, several hundred people nightly across the country. So let's talk a little bit about that. If people are watching this and they think, man, this dude's awesome, I want to see his act. I want to go out and maybe learn a little bit more about Dante the comic. You've written a book. People might want to read your book. I'm sure they do. Maybe not so many of my audience members like to read books, but still, there's probably 2 or 3. I've had 15 best-selling authors, so they like to write them. Where do people find you? What do you got going on? Where can we come see you and all that good stuff?
Luckily for me, I am the second most famous Dante in comedy. The first one was a guy named Dante Alighieri in like the 1400s, who wrote, the stuff about the Inferno and hell and everything. So when you Google Dante Wright comedian, and you'll find a million things on me. But I'm just Dante the comic on everything. On all social media, Dante the comic. I perform all over the world. If you're on a military base, I'm sure you'll see me at some point. I'm a regular at all of the major clubs here in LA, and my name's on all the buildings and my face and all that good stuff. But I will say this, we didn't talk much about comedy, and I probably wasn't as funny as people might expect when you say you have a comic on. My shows are more fun than any other comic, hands down, I promise. When people leave my shows, there's always either a standing ovation or where are we going now? Like they think we're all best friends by the end. And that's how I like it, because that's the vibe I want. I want you to feel like you just partied with me and can't wait to hang out with me next Saturday. And because of that, and because of how wild my shows get, and I'll like talk to you for like 10 minutes of my act, and now that can't be recreated the next night. People want to come back the next night because they're like, even if I hear 20 of the same jokes, I'm going to see 30 minutes of him just playing with the crowd and interacting and being yelled at. And it's crazy. It's a fun, crazy thing I do up there. And everyone gets to be involved. And if you don't want to be involved, I leave you alone.
I like that. And to me, that what you just said is amazing. The most fun. This has been the most fun show that I've ever had. And I've had some really good people come on here and tell some amazing stories. But I just met a guy that, you know, that knows Big Worm, that knows Jamie Foxx, that's fought Muhammad Ali, that Tupac is buddies with. Barack Obama follows on social media. Like,
it just sounds like
awesome.
Black people like me.
Well, hey, everybody likes you, man. We all love Tupac. Come on. I grew up in the 80s and 90s myself, so I probably watched a lot of that stuff.
I'm joking.
No, I got you, dude.
It's been, look, maybe I think you and I didn't say, we said something to each other off camera, and I think we should say it here. You said up front about having fun, and I said that's the key to every business. Having fun is the key. If you have fun on stage, you're going to be great. I watched the Cubs win the World Series when they were down in the 9th or whatever, or the 7th, right? And someone asked them afterwards, they asked the catcher, I'll never forget this because I said to my wife, that's what I say every day to people. They go, how did you guys win? And he goes, man, we were down by 1 million. I went out there and I said to everybody, you guys, why are you depressed? We're at the World Series. If we lose, we lose. If we win, we win. Let's just go have fun. He goes, the minute they went out there and had fun, we won. The minute they stopped being worried and had fun, we won. The minute I stopped worrying about a joke or anything else and just started having fun, it's like when you watch Saturday Night Live and you're falling asleep and it's like 12:30 and all of a sudden someone breaks and they start giggling. And you're like, oh my God, they're funny. No, they're not. They're not funny. They're having fun. Now you're having fun.
It's all about having fun. And I got to say, this has been extremely fun. I love to have fun myself, and I'm very lighthearted and energetic. And this has definitely been the most fun episode of Keeping It Rio as far as uniqueness, for sure. Yeah, man, I'm glad to hear that because that was my goal coming in. And it's difficult sometimes when you meet somebody 5 minutes before you start recording an episode and you start thinking, okay, am I going to be able to make this entertaining? Is this guy going to like this?
Can you imagine having to interview De Niro? Have you ever seen him, how he doesn't talk? You're like, so did you like that movie? He's like, yep. I heard he does it on purpose so that they don't send him to do press junkets.
Got to respect that, right? If you want to get out of things, that's one surefire way to get out of doing PR is
don't be good at it, right?
One word answers, baby, all day long. So that's terrific. And I definitely right now on this episode 170, I would love to extend an invitation for you to come back sometime down the road because we still have a ton to talk about. We didn't even talk about comedy. You're right. And we've got plenty of things that we can cover. I know you're going to be a crowd favorite for sure. And yeah, let's do this again sometime down the road. And
anytime you want. Let me plug one last thing and I'll come back anytime you want.
Please.
I have 2 albums out. One is called Dante Does Dallas, and the other one is called Dante's Divine Comedy Album. The reason I named it that is it's the same name as Dante's Divine Comedy that Dante Alighieri wrote. And I figured if enough college kids download this by accident, I'll be rich.
That's the way you do it right there. That's beautiful, absolutely brilliant, and I hope that plan comes to fruition because Yeah, nobody else. Like you said, you're the only other guy that could make that work. So in comedy as Dante, you're the man. And
thanks for having me, Chuck.
My pleasure. Thank you to everybody who watches Keeping It Real. And one thing before we leave, Dante, I have to do this because I do this on every episode.
Okay.
I would like to ask you. I have a very, very amazing sponsor of my podcast. I'm wearing the hat, and you can see a little logo up here. My sponsor is called roofer.com. I would have to venture to assume that you probably have never heard of roofer.com, being a stand-up comedian. Let me tell you a little bit about Roofer real quick. So 8 years ago, a couple buddies who were roofers found that there was a huge need in our industry for something that could help you get organized, that could help you keep track of things, and could kind of help with your workflow. So they went to work. They started a company which initially was just based on aerial measurements. But as this company has evolved over the last several years, it now has a full service customer relationship management tool that we utilize. And literally it takes you from the very beginning, contact with a homeowner, all the way to the final payment. And if it's okay with you, Dante, before we bid each other adieu, I would like to share this 20-second ad with you so you can learn as much about roofer.com as possible the next 20 seconds. So check this out, ladies and gentlemen. You know I love Roofer. I harp about this every episode and all over social media. But check this out, Dante. I'm going to go 3, 2, 1.
We're Roofer. We know that managing a roofing business can be chaotic, so we created a single platform with all the tools you need to easily run your roofing business. Stop switching between multiple different softwares and experience streamlined operations from lead to payment in hours instead of days. Visit roofr.com to get started for free today.
It's actually really good.
Yeah, it is absolutely the most amazing tool. I love it. I run it with my roofing company on a daily basis, and thank you, Roofer. They've been my sponsor for 2 years.
Things to make life easier.
Yep. And it's done by roofers. So they understand we're not very bright. We need something very simple. You can just touch the screen and make things happen. And God bless them, because without it, who knows where we'd be. I'd still be writing things on napkins and doing all that. But this has been a great episode, ladies and gentlemen. As always, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for your support, for liking, sharing, doing all that stuff, subscribing. Until next time, this is episode, I think, 169, 170. And my amazing guest, Dante Riucolelli. Thank you, my friend. I am looking forward to following your career, and I'm going to come to one of your shows in the not too distant future. And maybe it's going to be a Prince situation.
Listening that you want Dante at your club, you should call LOL. I'll come out to San Antonio and come see you.
Now, you might think that I'm not going to make this happen, but watch. I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to go to LOL tomorrow, and I'm going to say, hey, guys, I know the funniest man on the face of the earth. He's got stories. Let's do it. So we will see Dante at LOL here in San Antonio. And if not, I'm going to travel because this guy's a guest on my show. He took the time. Thank you for that, my friend. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I always end with the cheesiest, most corny tagline in the history of podcast. Keep on. Keep it.